Today's episode of Beyond the Mask is presented by the insurance specialists at Bright Think Wealth Strategies. Find the disability insurance coverage that fits you best right now. Email Robert Smith at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. The show is also made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. Get a free consultation today to be guided through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Just visit crnafinancialplanning.com. We'd also like to thank Helping Hands and OSA EMR for their support of the show. And don't forget, listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits. For more information on how you can submit them, check out the CE Credit tab on our website, beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to Beyond the Mask, Innovation and Opportunities for CRNAs with Jeremy Stanley and Sharon Pierce. We know you spend your day caring for your patient's best interests. On our show, we want to care for you. Join us as we leave the operating room and learn the latest in the CRNA industry. Beyond the Mask starts in 10, 9, 8, 7.
Welcome to Beyond the Mask. I'm Jeremy Stanley, and I've been working with CRNAs for over 23 years, and I'm married to one. And my co-host is
Sharon Pierce.
Sharon's a practicing CRNA for over 20 years, a past president of the AANA, the NCANA, and she's held many other leadership roles. As usual, our goal with every episode is to educate and enlighten CRNAs, and I think our topic today is definitely going to do that. And Sharon, what time is it?
It's time to wake up, Jeremy.
I think it is. Well, hello, Sharon, and welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so good to be here. I just wish we were in the studio together.
Yeah, but this is the next best thing. I don't mind this as much.
No, it's not too bad. And since we've got such a great guest on with us today,
we have an
and
amazing
she couldn't
guest.
have come to Winston-Salem.
Yeah, well, we have an amazing guest. Well, I'll let you intro our guest today.
Oh, I get the pleasure.
You do.
I must be living right.
You are.
Well, it is my pleasure to introduce Renee Ellmers, and she is a nurse, and she's running for Congress, and she served in Congress before. So, Renee, I'll just go ahead and kick it off to you and let you tell us about the time that you served in Congress, and just go for it.
Right. Well, Sharon, thank you for having me. We've gotten to know each other over the last couple of weeks, and it's really been a pleasure to speak to another nurse who cares so much about individuals and families that are in need of health care and all of the obstacles that are in the way right now for providing that. And that is one of my main reasons for running for Congress again. I've been a nurse for years. I started off in surgical intensive care, and I've even worked in my husband's office. My husband is a general surgeon. And, we've provided healthcare here in North Carolina for many, many years. And over the years, we've seen, again, those obstacles that are in the way. And unfortunately, one of the main obstacles is the government and all of the overregulations that we have to deal with. And, here in North Carolina, especially living in somewhat of a rural area, I see the healthcare disparities that exist and the fact that access to care is really prominent. And I really feel strongly about doing something on that level. And that is one of the reasons that I'm running for Congress again. I was in Congress for 6 years. Was there from 2011 to 2017. And what motivated me to run for office then was when President Obama was president, and he was moving forward on his healthcare initiatives, which I did not agree with. I look at this as a market issue and really a provider issue and an access to care issue, not a government-run solution. As we all know, when the government gets involved with something, many times it doesn't go well. So I wanted to go there and fight for North Carolinians on that level, spending 6 years there. I also spent 2 years at Health and Human Services. So I learned a great deal there on provider issues and access to care issues. So Now, after spending 2 years taking care of patients with COVID, some of them starting off as with veterans at a veterans nursing home in long-term care. I really got to see what COVID was doing, not just on the grand scale, but on the very personal scale, especially with our veterans. And I just feel very strongly that we need some good, strong voices in Washington, especially nurses that have been there on the ground, on the front lines, taking care of patients and families, who really can speak to the system that exists now and move forward with good regulations and legislation that can really move our country in the right direction when it comes to healthcare.
Wow, you said a lot there. And you pretty much summed up almost everything I was going to say, Renee. But, why, I mean, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but why do nurses make good elected officials, in your opinion?
Well, I'll tell you, when I think of nursing practice, what do we do every day? We apply the nursing process. We observe, we assess, we plan, we implement, and you know what else? We go back and we follow up to make sure that what we're actually doing is effective.
Right.
And unfortunately, many times in Washington, that's not what happens. We move forward on something, and then we never really go back to look to see whether or not it's working until we end up in a situation where we see a problem. I think that we need to use more of that process. Nurses listen. We listen to what is being said and we listen to what is not being said. And I think that's one of the things that nurses really bring to the table and why nurses make such good elected officials, because we really are engaged. It's not just talk. It's really listening, assessing, problem solving.
So you talked about a problem with access to care in this country. So I'm assuming that means allowing advanced practice nurses to practice to the top of their license. CRNAs, we've been battling for years at the federal level to give us full practice authority within the VA. You and I have talked about that. When you get to Congress again, will that be an important issue to you?
Absolutely. This is one of the issues that even when I was there previously, I had so many discussions and we were trying so hard to move forward to advance practice nurses in the way that we needed to. Unfortunately, as you know, in Washington, it can be very difficult because the larger groups, some of the lobbying organizations that don't necessarily see us as the drivers of healthcare, they get a lot of the attention. And that, again, is one of the reasons that I feel so strongly that we need to get more nurses to Washington. But advanced practice nursing is really one of my solutions to the access to care issues that exist. I've listened to the groups, I've listened to the physician groups, I've listened to the hospital systems, and everyone says they acknowledge that there's an access to care issue and that it's a problem, but no one really seems to put forward the solutions. But advanced practice nurses are there every day on the ground, going to work and solving the problems. We just need more. And in order to have more, we've got to make it attractive. We've got to be comparable in reimbursement. And I really feel very strongly that this will be one of these that I will be fighting very, very hard for.
Renee, one of the issues we hear all the time from the other side, or in this scenario, when we're talking about CRNAs in general, is the anesthesiologists say that they have a better quality of care. And that's always their mantra. We're better educated. We've got more clinical hours. Our outcomes are better. And, we just had, something here in North Carolina where we had that same issue happen. What is your take on that? I mean, obviously, me being the money guy, I know what this boils down to. It boils down to the dollar. You've got a huge slice of GDP, almost 20% composed in the healthcare sector. And a lot of people have made a lot of money off of healthcare, and nobody wants to take that golden goose away. And when you start to kind of pull that away, people get angry and start fighting, and then they say things that, in my opinion, are untrue. So I'd love your take on that.
When I listen to some of the other groups talking about this particular issue, who aren't necessarily in favor of parity or comparable reimbursement for advanced practice nurses, those are some of the things that are discussed. They say, well, the quality of care is not the same, and we have a more extensive education. And although those things are very, very true, the nurses are there with the patients every moment. They're the ones who are usually, at the bedside, implementing, giving the medications and monitoring the patients and really doing those assessments. I don't think that needs to be part of the conversation. Honestly, I think there is so much that we can be doing if we really look at this again as an access to care issue, rather than that pie is only so big, and if you get a little bit bigger piece of the pie, that means my piece is going to get smaller. There is more than enough to go around. If we really are doing what we need to do in this country with healthcare and really providing the nursing services, the physicians working, doing what they need to do, everyone wins. It's a win-win situation, not only for the practitioners, but for our patients, for our families in North Carolina. Everyone wins with this situation. There's more than enough to go around. No one is going to be boxed out of this. And I think, again, if we're talking about quality of care, we're actually talking about improving quality of care by moving forward and allowing advanced practice nurses to really be able to be reimbursed at the level that they really deserve to be reimbursed.
You talked about access to care, and what was interesting during COVID, Trump lifted all restrictions, and we've not seen just a slew of deaths all across the country because APRNs were allowed to practice to their fullest extent. So what would you have to say about that?
Well, I think that's a great example. And, as bad as COVID was, I think we really have some things that we're taking away from it that we have learned. And that is one of them. That's a prime example of how nurses came to the forefront and really, took on the initiatives. I know for me, I was there every day. I worked over 35 days straight, 12-hour shifts in PPE all day long. And two of us, nurse, took the 12-hour midnight shift. I took the day 12-hour shift. There wasn't anybody else there to do the job. The nurses are the ones who are on the front lines, not afraid to do what needs to be done and doing a great job. We can't fear this. And I think that's one of the things that I see with some of the groups that seem to be standing in the way of advanced practice nurses really moving forward is it's that fear factor that's implemented. Right now, we have a problem with access to care. We need to solve the problem. Again, when I was there 6 years ago, I was having this conversation. I haven't seen anything change since, which tells me that everyone is complacent in this outside of the advanced practice nurses, and that those same arguments and those same discussions are being had today that were taking place 6 years ago. That means things aren't moving forward. And again, if we can do anything, we can take some positives away from COVID from a learning perspective. And that is definitely one of them.
Yeah, me learning from doing this podcast is we're still having the same discussions we had 20 years ago, Renee. These are the same fights that, the people that came before you were fighting, and we're still fighting them. And obviously in Washington, things typically move slowly, and that's just politics in general. But I just kind of want to extrapolate a little bit more on that. Yes, I think access to care, one thing we could do is obviously have more APRNs work up to their scope. But is there anything else that you see out there that needs to be done, Renee, to kind of get this thing moving back on the right track?
Oh, absolutely. When even again, talking about issues and dealing with things that still exist when I was there 6 years ago. One of the things that I fought very hard for and still continue to believe is one of the solutions is really just when it comes to the system itself that exists in the insurance industry, for instance. We hear about folks not being able to afford health insurance. I don't believe that a government-run health insurance system is the way to go. I don't believe in Medicare for all or universal health care paid for by the federal government. I do believe that private insurance should be available to everyone. And I believe very strongly that insurance should be able to be purchased across state lines. State has the group of insurance plans that you can pick from, which basically creates a monopoly. And because of that, that keeps those costs high. And so if we had a system that was a greater reach, for instance, if individuals, if families, moms and dads were able to sit down at the table and choose from a healthcare plan that may be somewhere else, in the region maybe, but more affordable and appropriate for them, that would be a solution to bringing down those costs and help to create that more availability so that families have that coverage.
Have you thought about what would happen if you weren't able to work for 2 or 3 years? On average, 25% of people will file a disability claim, and most of us aren't prepared for that loss of income. Every CRNA needs to protect their biggest asset, yourself, and your ability to earn with a disability insurance policy. We recommend contacting Robert Smith, a master disability insurance specialist with more than 30 years of experience and 1,800 CRNA clients, to find the coverage that fits you best. The best way to do that is to send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com, or call him at 504-394-6557.
So let's go back to nurses serving in Congress. And there are only 3 right now. There's never been a nurse to serve in the Senate. But I understand that there is one that's currently running for the Senate in Missouri, and she is the heiress to the Bush fortune, which I know.
Wow.
I was doing a little bit of research about that today. And there seems to be one nurse in Florida who's running for the House, Congress, and one in Virginia. But that is so very few, and they're hard to find. So I'm hoping you will find some allies whenever you get to Washington again.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think too, this is one of the things that I've seen, having been in Washington and run for office. Once you can start building that coalition of support, it continues, but there has to be someone there to really move it forward. And I'm happy to be that one. Happy to be the one to be able to say, come on, ladies and gentlemen, let's get together. Let's work on these issues. Maybe, let's bring a perspective to the table that maybe hasn't, been discussed yet, especially with so few nurses being there. I do think, from the political aspect, I think sometimes if you're a Republican or versus a Democrat, you do see some of the healthcare issues a little differently. And so I think that can be an obstacle. And so I would like to see some good conservative nurses elected so that we can really help to bolster, the discussion of why it's so important in this country to make healthcare more affordable, can maintain that good quality of care, and just really improve the accessibility.
Renee, why do you think, first, more nurses don't run and haven't been elected? I mean, this is amazing to me when we're talking about, I think there's like 4 million nurses in the U.S. or something. Is it a lack of awareness? Is it, they're busy doing other things and they've just not been taught how to be involved in politics? I mean, what do you think it is?
Well, I've actually had this discussion many times with many nurses, because what's interesting is there's a lot of nurses who have thought about this, but they're just not sure how to get started. They don't really know how do you transition from being a nurse into running for political office? And so I point out to nurses, we deal with politics every day. When I worked in the hospital, for instance, there's politics in every hospital,
Right.
at every level. There are politics in our communities. If you're serving in a charitable organization, there's politics there too. So once you kind of point out to folks that really politics exists in every aspect of our lives, it becomes a little bit easier for nurses to understand. And I just, you know how nurses are. We have that helping heart, and many nurses, just love that bedside care that they give and taking care of patients, and they don't necessarily see making that transition. But I will tell you, I have had this conversation many times, and I have explained that because we are nurses and because we use a nursing process, not only is it possible for nurses to run for office and be very successful, but once they get there, you're very good at what you do.
Well, also what I hear you saying is that since you've been there before, when you get there this time, you can hit the ground running.
Absolutely. Because I was there already, I know on the day I'm sworn in, I can go right to work. I don't have to go through that learning curve that many of the other freshmen will have to go through. And actually, one of the things that I look forward to doing is actually being a mentor for the other freshmen. Again, that nursing heart, that teacher in me will want to help them understand this is what you're going to be experiencing. A lot of folks are going to be telling you a lot of things. You need to trust your guts and really just stay grounded, because a lot of folks are going to be treating you in a way as that you've never been treated before, and you need to be solidly grounded in all of your decisions moving forward. I'd like to be that person to be able to help them to kind of see that aspect.
Renee, it's interesting you say that. What was something that stuck out to you as a freshman that kind of took you back and like, whoa, I'm in a different world now?
Once you get to Washington, it is a different world. Washington is, I know you've probably heard this term many times. It's like a bubble. It's like its own little world, and it's its own little, I compare it to a corporation, moving parts, and, everybody has a role to play. But I think one of the things that I learned pretty quickly is that, when you're a new face in Washington, everyone wants to get your ear, because they want you to see things and hear things, that is important to them. And they want to, gain your support. They're, again, talking about the politics. Even after getting elected, you deal with a lot of inside baseball politics within your own conference, for instance. So, one of the things that I learned very quickly was that you become everybody's best friend. And they just want, you're just the greatest thing that ever walked, and you're a rock star. But later when the going gets tough and maybe things don't look so good, you're kind of left out. Definitely, you've got to have a strong personality. You cannot have an ego, and you just have to really take it day by day and really see it for what it is, and don't allow yourself to buy into the hype.
Let's talk a little bit about the poor nurse in Tennessee who recently was convicted after medical error. So I'm not too sure that a physician has ever been convicted in that same manner. And why don't you talk to us about your feelings about that and what you would do when you get back to Congress?
Well, yeah, I'm very concerned about this issue. I learned about it recently. And, first and foremost, as you are aware, there was a family who lost their loved one in a mistake that was made in a hospital. And, certainly the nurse that was involved, she owned it. I mean, this was something that happened. I am very concerned about it because I think that there just seemed to be accountability that wasn't taken on the part of the hospital. I'm concerned that she was actually convicted of reckless homicide. I believe there were two convictions. And this was something that happened in 2017. And having been a nurse, and knowing that medical medication errors happen, there's a process that all of us have to follow. Physicians, nurses alike. I would like to know, where was the responsibility and accountability on the part of the hospital? I'd like to know what the situation was with staffing that particular day. As you know, staffing issues affect us every single day when it comes to nursing. Typically short staffing is what I'm talking about. So I think that there were a lot of issues that played into this. And, again, someone lost their life, a family lost their loved one, but the process needs to be reviewed. And I would like to take that opportunity at the federal level and really go down the line and make sure that there are processes in place that everyone can follow. Let's face it, medical mistakes happen. This isn't new. But one individual should not have to feel the brunt of what happened. And I just think that we need to look at this as a whole and understand what the hospital's accountability really needs to be.
Renee, all of us weren't in that courtroom, and obviously we don't know every single fact there, but I think we can all sympathize with her because of Sharon's point earlier. If this had been a physician, would this have gone down this way? How do you think nurses all across the country can help this particular nurse in this situation?
Well, I think as nurses, certainly one, I'm very concerned about this because I don't want this to be the driving forces for individuals who are thinking about going into nursing, because certainly we need more nurses. I don't want nurses to stop doing what they're doing, or young people who are looking at nursing as a potential career, seeing something like this and letting it be the force that drives them away to some other career path. I'm very concerned about that. But nurses across this country, one, we need to make sure that they're aware of this situation. It could be them the next time. It could be any one of us in nursing practice. And we've got to be speaking out. We have to be more organized, and we have to be reaching out to the groups that support and help nurses, especially when it comes to Washington, D.C. and the organized groups. This is an awareness issue. And I really feel strongly that nurses need to be making their voices heard on this issue, because it could be any one of us next time. And it's very concerning to me.
Renee, do you feel like that it's because nurses are not at the table? Nurses probably weren't at the table at the particular hospital, which was Vanderbilt. Nurses are not at the table a lot of times in the legislature. They're not at the table in Congress. There's 18 physicians that serve in Congress right now, and 3 nurses. Hopefully there's going to be 4 nurses and plus coming up.
Well, I will say that is definitely part of it, because, you can't voice your position if you are not there.
Right.
And, and there, you pointed out that there are 18 physicians that are there. I know when I served, there were a number of physicians that I served with, and they do see things differently. We see the root cause of the problem. And I do believe that if more nurses are at the table, whether it is in the hospital setting or whether it is in Washington, we can be making better decisions because we're bringing up issues that the others don't even see or recognize as an issue. So that is one solution to the issue. But I will also add that when it comes to issues like this for hospitals, they have the resources to lawyer up. And, we're talking about legal battles, we're talking about risk management. So many of these decisions get made at that level, I believe, before there's even any discussion in the boardroom. And, that can be the driving force here as well.
Well, I just think this sets a really bad precedent from what I've read about it. I mean, medical errors they're generally handled by professional licensing boards or even civil courts to go after someone criminally. It's very, very rare. I mean, and you're right. I mean, does it affect nurses? You know, my oldest daughter is in nursing school right now, you know, and it's on her mind, you know, hey, you know, I mean, she wants to be a CRNA, but still, those are things that every nurse across this country are going to have in the back of their mind now. And again, I think that sets a really bad precedent. But I don't know if you've got anything else on that. But in my mind, that's sort of the way I view it.
I am concerned about the precedent that's being set here, because now that we have this situation, this particular case moving forward, where a nurse is being convicted of reckless homicide, the next time a situation like this occurs, that path can be taken again because it's already occurred. So, you know, we have to be very, very careful about this. And I'm hoping that this isn't the end of this situation. It's hard for me to understand how this particular path was chosen to charge this nurse with homicide. My understanding, it was a jury trial. And I think too, when we're talking about cases that are medical in nature, it's very, very, very difficult for lay people to understand, you know, the ins and outs, all of the very high level technical issues and really be able to make a decision. So I hope that this isn't the last we've heard of this particular case. And again, I am concerned. And I think that nurses across this country should be concerned. And you know, let's all work together to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Let's make sure that medical errors are kept at a minimum. Let's make sure that we have a process in place where we're really looking at this from an honest perspective and understanding that medical errors happen, but there are ways that we can improve the system to avoid them at all costs.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is, at the end of the day, we need more influential nurses in key positions. Now, you know, Sharon Pierce might say something about this particular incident, but somebody who's in Congress, when they say something, you've got a bigger audience that you can use as a megaphone to get this message out. So we need to help nurses get into Congress, and that includes you. How can nurses across this country help you? I know you're running from North Carolina, but it's important for all nurses in this country to have your voice in Congress. What can nurses do to help you, Renee?
I would greatly appreciate the help of nurses across this country. I really want to go to Washington to solve the problems that are there. I'm a problem solver. I am a fixer. That's my heart. I have a nursing heart. And I know that nurses across this country need better representation. I would like to be one of those. And if nurses who are listening to your podcast today can just make a small contribution, just a small contribution to my campaign. My website is reneeellmers.com, and Ellmers does have two L's. So it's reneeellmers.com, and you can, give a donation. That is the way that campaigns are best run. That's the way that I can get my message out. I think I have a great message, but if you don't have the funds to get it out, if people don't hear you, it doesn't really matter in the end. So if your listeners can help out with a contribution to my campaign, that is really the biggest help. And I promise you, nursing issues are going to be at the forefront of my platform while in Washington.
And in addition, I would think that if they would push it out on their social media sites and talk about Renee Ellmers, a voice for nursing in Washington, would be helpful. I know I have a few thousand friends on Facebook. I think that might.
Yeah, that actually, social media, social media is such a driving force for really, really, getting those things out there. back when I ran before, we weren't very good at social media, and I have become much more active, and I would truly appreciate any voice on social media regarding these issues, because again, we've got to fight this fight together. And, there's just power in numbers. And if we stick together as nurses, we can make some significant changes.
Beyond the Mask is made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. With almost 2 decades of experience, the firm guides CRNAs through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Schedule a free consultation today by calling 855-304-3748 or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
Absolutely. Well, Renee, as we wrap up, I'm just sitting here thinking, do you have any tips or recommendations maybe for nurses out there who might want to get involved in politics and don't know where to get started or what they need to do next or even what they can do? I mean, obviously, giving to folks like you who are going to represent their interests in Washington is a great way to do it, but are there other things they can do at this point?
Well, interestingly enough, when I ran back in 2010, I had no political background. I was not a politician. We were just healthcare providers. We got involved with our local political party, and I live in Harnett County, North Carolina, and I got involved with the Harnett County Republican Party, and I realized that there are so many concerned about these issues. And it's amazing how just making those connections really helps, because I will say this, politics, whether it's at the local level, the state level, the federal level, you make it into Washington, it's all about relationships. So it's about relationship building, and you learn from those relationships. So I would encourage any nurse who is out there who wants to get involved, and it doesn't have, you don't have to make the decision like I did to be at the federal level. We need nurses at every level. We need good, strong, solid nurses with voices on the boards of education, in local politics, city councils, state legislatures. That's the way we are really going to make a difference, is if it's across the board in every aspect and really making those good, positive, solid decisions that really solve the problems.
Very well said. Sharon, do you want to do the lightning round with Renee?
Oh, I would love to do the lightning round. It's my favorite part. If you could choose another profession, what would it be?
I think that if I could choose another profession, it would definitely be something where I dealt with people. So I think a teacher. I think being a teacher would probably have been my second choice.
Interesting. Well, nurses are somewhat teachers at heart as well, right? So that
we do a lot of teaching.
Do a lot of teaching. All right. If you could have dinner with someone alive or dead, who would it be?
This probably sounds cliche, but I would say Jesus. I just, that Jesus, my faith is the center of my life. And I would just love to be able to ask some questions and really just, again, listen. But wow, after having dinner with Jesus, what else would you want to do?
It all goes downhill from there, right?
All right. If you could have witnessed one event in history, what would it be?
I think if I could witness an event in history, it would be the founding of our country. And to know some of those individuals who were the fighters that didn't give up, and really just watch that whole process from really the infancy to what we have today in the freedoms that we have. Because I think the beginnings of our country is just the most miraculous event that has taken place on from that type of perspective. And I do believe that our country were blessed. I believe they were, inspired, in a divine manner. And I think that if I could just watch those events firsthand, that would have been pretty cool.
Renee, what is your superpower?
My superpower is really listening. and just really being able to hear what someone is saying. And again, as I said earlier, nurses listen to what is being said and what is not being said. And sometimes when you're in the process of listening, that should inspire questions. And I think sometimes that nurses are so good at what they do is because they're able to get to the root cause of issues and problems. And I think there's just more listening that needs to go on in this country. You do a lot of talking, but listening is kind of a forgotten art.
Yes, you're exactly right. You know, the three of us here are type A personalities. But you know what I notice about all three of us is that there's always give and take. You know, you hate to see that one side who just continues to take and take and take and never give. And, you know, that comes across very well with you, Renee. So I pick up on that too. Well, listen, we want to thank you for being on the show with us today. I know that you and Sharon had a relationship, but it was very nice to meet you today. We wish you all the luck with your run. I don't think you're going to need it. I think you're going to do great. I can just tell. And we want to thank you for what you're doing in the community, not only for nurses and APRNs out there, but because your true belief in this country and you believe in this country and the direction that we're going can be positive moving forward. And that's hard to find out there with a lot of people right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you making those comments. And it has been great. It has been an honor to be on this podcast with you today. And talking about the issues that really, you know, it's what makes me tick. And my heart is warmed to know that there are others out there who really care about these issues as passionately as I do. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Sharon. Well, I'm going to say that's a wrap.
I think so.
Before we close here, I just want to remind folks, if you'd like to help Renee, go to Renee Ellmers, Ellmers with 2L.com, and you can give to her campaign that way. And Sharon, if they want to help us and help our show grow, how can they best do that?
They can leave us a review, but make it
positive. We know there's enough negativity in this world.
Absolutely. Share the podcast on social media. Tell your friends and help us go up. We're in the top 50 medical podcasts in the country right now, but Jeremy wants us to be
number one. Of course.
So help us do that.
All right. Until next time.
It's a wrap.
As a CRNA, you spend years preparing yourself for this career, so we don't want to see you lose out on any of the income you've worked so hard to earn. The best way to protect yourself and give you the confidence that a major life event won't disrupt your financial future is through disability insurance. We've known disability income specialist Robert Smith for many years and have seen the work he's done with nearly 2,000 CRNAs over multiple decades. He can help identify any gaps in your existing coverage and fill those gaps by finding the best value on a policy. Contact Robert and let him know you heard about him on our podcast. Send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com. Or call him at 504-394-6557. Protect your greatest asset as a CRNA, yourself and your ability to earn a living by adding disability insurance to your financial plan. Today's show is brought to you by the folks at CRNA Financial Planning, an independent consulting firm that offers financial planning services exclusively to CRNAs and their families. From planning for a child's future college expenses to building a predictable income stream in retirement, the firm is committed to offering you comprehensive financial services, customized to fit your unique needs and objectives. If you have questions about your financial future, get them answered. Call the team at 855-304-3748. That's 855-304-3748. Or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
Hi, Hi, this is Jackie Rolls, President of the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists and President and founder of Our Hearts, Your Hands, a global anesthesia support community that takes donations to allow nurse anesthetists in low and middle income countries to go to educational programs, to buy equipment or textbooks. Your donations are tax deductible, and we would appreciate your support.
OSA EMR is a free anesthesia EMR developed by CRNAs that you can download and use on an iPad. Our nonprofit mission is to make sure that solo and small practice CRNAs can digitally record their anesthetics. To learn more, visit osaemr.com to download and consider donating to our cause. Remember, for CRNAs, data is destiny.
Be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you like to listen to shows. Also be sure to check out BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. Each episode is posted there with a corresponding blog post, and we timestamp important parts of the episode to help you quickly get to the content you're looking for. Also check out the special series section on the site. You can follow along and catch up on the CRNA History Series, episodes specifically about political conversations in the industry. Or try the CRNA Personal Finance Series. It's all on BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. And if you have a question for the show or want to be a guest, or even suggest a particular topic, fill out the contact form on the site or send an email directly to us at info@BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. And lastly, let's take the conversation social. Check out our Beyond the Mask podcast Facebook page and Facebook group.